Okay, welcome to the North Creek Station. Now, I'm not really sure what's going to happen here because for the first time I'm not controlling the GoPro with my phone. I just turned it on and figured, let's see what happens. As you can see, this is the North Creek Station. This once upon a time belonged to the Delaware and Hudson. It, up until recently, belonged to the Saratoga and North Creek Railroad, which was a tourist railroad that went from Saratoga, New York, all the way up here, which is about 100 miles or so. Unfortunately, the company that used to do it couldn't afford to do it anymore. So it's been shut now for about a year, give or take. One of the more important things, if you see that little sign right there, was this is the station that Teddy Roosevelt used to get off on. He had a place called the Sagamore, which wasn't very far from here. Matter of fact, there's a whole thing about him. Teddy Roosevelt was my favorite all-time president. In this particular case, yes, Roosevelt did come up here quite a bit. However, when William McKinney was visiting the Buffalo Exposition, he was shot. He started to recover, and Roosevelt went on a hike up Mount Marcy, which is the tallest mountain in New York. And while he was on that hike, McKinley died, making Roosevelt the president. Roosevelt didn't know this. However, a messenger runner was sent to find him, who found him hiking up Mount Marcy. By the time Roosevelt had actually gotten back here to the station, McKinley had been pronounced dead. In turn, right over in here, where the train was waiting for Roosevelt, Roosevelt was sworn in as the President of the United States on this depot dock, which is probably like one of my favorite stories ever. It's like cool. Here's one of the old D&H cabooses. Is it cabooses? Cabi? Caboose? I don't know. Anyway. There it is. It's all set up for Santa Claus, I guess. I don't know. I think it'd be really cool to sit in one of those seats right up there. I could actually live in this. These people buy and build all these friggin' tiny houses. Nobody ever buys a caboose to live in. I mean, look at this thing. It'd be awesome. They're equipped. I mean, they're equipped to sustain life. They've got bunks. They've got heaters. They've got like a potbelly stove, coal. You can cook in there. You can sleep in there. The stove provides heat. Pretty sure there's no Wi-Fi. That's just me. Well, anyway, after the whole Roosevelt thing, this has always been a popular ski area. So the train would come up here. Oh, by the way, that's the Hudson River in the background. The train would come up here, drop people off. Here's some old chairlifts from probably Gore Mountain, because that's closer. It could also be Whiteface Mountain, which is where the Olympics were held. This has always been one of my favorite places. It's, I don't know, it's got all kinds of history. Now here's the other end. Ah! A person! That, the potbelly stove, it would be in the corner here, usually. Well, there it is, over there. Oops. And then, like, usually where this table is, at this really creepy looking lady is sitting at, this mannequin, this is where the conductor would do all his paperwork and stuff. The caboose was used for a number of things. Primarily, it was like a rolling office for the conductor. Not like today where they kind of screw the conductors over and make them freeze and ride on the back of the damn train when they're running short runs. But because of this, the way the communication system was, or lack of, the conductor would sit back here and they would put lanterns up to mark the tail end of the train. And then over on this side was usually a bench of some sort, but it also had the coal bucket and stuff. And there was like a little toilet in there in one of those cubbies. And the other ones were like a pantry and locker. And you can see that there's built-in steps going up to where the cupola is. And the main reason for that is the engineer could not see past the tender behind him. So it was the conductor and brakeman job to sit in here and take turns sitting up in that cupola and looking ahead and watching the train itself, looking for anything, like smoke from a wheel for a hot box, any sort of clearance issues, something might derail, whatever. And back here, the conductor had the ability to set the brakes. He also, depending on the time frame, had his own whistle back here that could be heard up in the engine. And he could actually blow that whistle if he had to. What they did is they had a relay through the steam line, or through the brake line. It was an air whistle, and they had the ability that when he blew that whistle, there was a small whistle by the engineer and by the fireman in the locomotive, and depending on the signal he gave, that would let them know what was happening. Like if they needed to stop the train or whatever, he would give whatever the whistle signal was and apply the brakes, and then they knew that there was something going on that he saw that they couldn't see. And it could very well be that he could see a car swaying a certain way, which would indicate that it was a bad coupling or that the bogies were bad or whatever. Anyway, I wish they at least keep them long enough, or keep them somewhat, so that somebody like one of today's conductors would be able to actually, I guess, see what the hell they're doing. But anyway, that's the caboose. Okay. Yeah, I thought I tilted it a little bit. It's the only reason why I put that back on. Okay. There we go. This is one of the train sheds. These are original buildings. They just look pretty. If you look here, you can see where the switching would have occurred. And yes, that is a turntable. It is functional. I do know that. When the Saratoga and North Creek were running their tourist business out here, now back years ago, I rode on this thing probably about 10 years or so ago. Or no, actually more like 15. They had a diesel engine, an Alco, that would take you on a tourist trip with some passenger cars they used to have out here. They may be in the shop. And when the train came back, it would actually push back, and then it would come up and it would turn around on that turntable from that track over there, so it was facing the opposite way, and then it would come back down through here and at the switch point come back over and reconnect. It's kind of cool. It went to the town of Riparius at the time, which hopefully I'll have enough battery and time to stop at, because I got to go right past it on the way back. But I'm about 2-ish hours north of the house, give or take. And as you can see, with the rusted surface on top of these rails, they're not in use anymore, unfortunately. But I don't know, that's a financial thing. Put all this money into wanting to save things, and then they don't put the money into actually keeping it once they've replaced it or repaired it. I mean, the station's in phenomenal shape. Not so sure about the paint. Hopefully they're going to do the trim again. My God, Even I can airbrush better than that. Anyway, you can see it's got the original storm windows. You know, the kind that you hang and then there's a hook on the inside. But, oh, it looks pretty. I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see. This is another experiment. Look at, there's those skis. It's another experiment with me in this GoPro. As I noticed the last time when I was in Eagle Bridge, I had the flashlight, which really didn't help. And I didn't realize that this thing had somewhat of a low light pickup because I didn't think you could see anything. By the way, this was passenger and freight combined. This was freight. A lot of it had to do with what was going out. This kind of freight would have generally been like passengers, baggage, steam trunks, that kind of thing. This kind of freight would have been bulk freight. Crates, carts. There was all kinds of stuff coming out of this area, to include taconite, which I'll stop and show you a couple of the big ass rocks out front. So yeah, here's the Barton Mill. Kind of interesting. Oh, they got some here. This is cool. This is kind of unique. This right here, this is taconite. And taconite's an ore. One of the interesting things about taconite is that it comes from, it's basically a scrap. But during World War II, this mine, the Tawas mine, which isn't far from here, but too far for today, it mostly a coal mine. But what they didn't know is the coal was in a taconite vein. And once they started to take all that apart and dig it all up and so forth, one of the things they found out was that taconite, when refined, becomes titanium, or can be used in the making of titanium. So one of the things that was really cool, oh, these are the guys that had the really cool rail cars you can ride. I need to check in on this. Titanium was used in the production of aircraft and munitions during World War II. So the little town of Tawas, there's the locomotive shed. Little town of Tawas, which had kind of started to die, you'll see. It's also known as Adirondack. Suddenly became popular, became flooded with people, workers coming to actually work and mine taconite for the titanium purposes. So it like rejuvenated this whole area. These tracks will actually go up there. Obviously, I cannot drive my car on the tracks. I put it in a swamp. That's about as far as I'm gonna go. But this is an original Delaware and Hudson wood frame boxcar. It's a phenomenal thing. They've been restoring it slowly, so I'm not gonna really touch the tarps because I mean, you can see the lichen build up on here. You can see they've got it boarded so that it doesn't leak. So I don't want to mess with that, but I'm gonna take a couple of things here. The door obviously is not original. They have been using it for storage. But what's really cool is everything else primarily is. All this wood is original. None of it's been replaced, well, except for this crap. This is the original manual brake wheel. I know that Jimmy has set a brake wheel. I don't know if you can imagine this manual linkage brake wheel. And there's your air bleed off. And then you, Jimmy, as a conductor, before you became a conductor, you would be a brakeman or a trainman, and you would be required in certain instances to run along the roof of this car, down this ladder, turn this wheel to apply brakes to help slow the entire locomotive. I would consider that a near-death experience, but that's just me. All right, this one's not set up for polling. Hopefully I can find something, or I don't think I will here, that's set up for polling. Here you go. This is the original car, the original wood, the original box frame, the original ladder going up the side. These are the original trucks and bogies, leaf spring suspension. You can see the brake shoes on the wheels. And how the fuck those shoes stopped this train, I'll never know. Somebody likes Yingling Lager. Anyway, here we go. There's the original brake system. This is all part of the original air brake system. I once did research on this thing, and I found out this boxcar was actually manufactured in, I want to say, in the late 19 teens, or like 1927 or some crap. Oh, goody, it's starting to snow. We're supposed to get a real bad storm, so you may be having fun later driving back. There's your brake linkage. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. More of these crazy shoes. More of these ginormous wheels. You can see the cooling fins cast into the back of that one over there. This one apparently still has some sort of lubrication in it because it's seeped out. Honestly, don't know if it's ever been moved or when it's ever been moved. This was a common thing for railroads, though. When they took a car out of service, a lot of times, especially these wooden box cars, they would bring them back to a depot or a shed or something, and they would turn them into storage, or they'd turn them into offices. Makes sense. I mean, railroads recycle if they can. On one hand, it's like because they're cheap as shit, but on the other hand, it's because why not? If it still has a purpose. You think about it, this is about the size of like a 1970s single wide trailer. People live in those all the time. I don't know what that is. It could be important. I'm going to take a walk over here just because I can. And because, I don't know, somebody else has done this, obviously. I thought those of you who are unfamiliar with what people mean by upstate New York would be interested to know that this is the, quote, mighty Hudson. You can hear it, too. You can hear it flow. It's kind of shallow. You might be able to see there's a couple of snow caps on rocks sticking out there. You can see over there where the water is like split. It's like it's hitting an obstruction and splitting around it, and it's whatever that snow is on top of. There's a couple of obstacles here right below the surface. Now the river's up a little bit because we had some rain, but right here at the edge, you step in, it'd probably be just about over my waist. So you're looking at maybe 4 feet. That's the Hudson. Everybody's used to the Hudson in New York City, where it's like a mile wide and huge boats or ships go in and out of it without any sort of problem. And this is where it starts. It actually continues upriver. I want to say about another 10 miles. It gets narrower and narrower, and then it comes out, becomes a creek, and then comes out of a lake called Lake Tiernacloud, which is underground spring fed, and that's the actual source of the Hudson River. These here were maintenance sheds. It's all railroad maintenance stuff. Okay, I am not entirely sure what these things are because I have not looked into it fully. However, I do know that on the side here where this camper lives, this was the sand drying shed. The sand would be dried because wet sand will stick, and the sand would be dried in here. Those were the big heaters up there. The dry sand would drop down into this hopper, and then from the hopper they would drop it down into something else, whether it be a small like a cart or something like that that they could actually manipulate, and it would be brought from there to the locomotives to be put into the sanding domes so that they had it for traction. Now, this road you see here used to also be track. There used to be track that obviously butted up to the back of the building here. There used to be a stub that ended roughly where the side of that handicap ramp is. This brick was added later, but this portion of it is part of the original structure. I'd like to say that this was some sort of office facility, maybe overseeing the whole yard, because this was an actual yard. It wasn't very big, but it was still a yard. This building here was part of the freight system and part of the freight house. And that bus is too big to be the one I rode on to and from school. Plus, I don't see any tongue marks on the windows from where we licked them. So, this is the North Creek Depot. A fun little day trip, huh? Again, I hope with COVID and stuff and the amount of money lost doesn't really affect this. They're pretty much a self-standing museum, so I'm hoping that they'll be okay. But I don't know. I don't know how anything is anymore. So, as we return to the car, I turn off our trip.